It's been an interesting week, recording this on 13th of September 2025. Of course, I'm talking about what happened on the 10th, allegedly, because of course this event, like all of such events, are planned, staged, carried out for maximum emotional effect and impact. These are shock rituals, which you can read about in a post I shared recently. And there are books about this. I believe Shock Doctrine is one of them that's out there. These events are staged and planned and orchestrated to effect changes, shifts, nudges in socio-cultural, paradigmatic sort of shifts and momentum to push consciousness en masse in a certain way, to move the needle left or right, depending on whatever agendas are currently on the docket. Of course, everything rippled out, as it tends to do now with social media and all the rest of it. Hundreds of millions, probably billions of related smaller events rippled out across all of Western Empire within 24 hours. And is still doing so, with the people that are reacting and standing up and having vigils and the rest of it. And that's all well and good if you're so inclined, but my goodness, this character essentially became a sacrificial lamb to their agenda. That's obvious. And everything in the months and years leading up to this particular moment has been orchestrated to maximize the impact. That's obvious. And of course, leading up to 9/11, of course, the timing is suspect, right? The day before this historic false flag hoax event from 2001 gets remembered, and the artificially and man-made nonsense that was. Another, important character is retired very publicly, very graphically, because we don't have time to get caught up in these things and then spend hours and days and weeks picking it apart and analyzing video and and listening to oh my goodness, there's the 19 encoded over this and the 33 being mentioned all over the place. On and on and on. You're falling for the same tricks time and again, just because it's been quiet for a couple of years. Well, actually, the whole fake earshot from last year was same idea. Who is the next best option that represents the youth, the younger crowd, that the old guy can't speak to and relate to in any way, shape, or form? That will now be subsumed into that movement because their lamb has been sacrificed. This whole movement will now be subsumed and polarized and energized anew because of this shock ritual that played out on the 10th. Do you see how that works? And I'd recommend taking a look at that Luke's colloquy chat I had about this, just for some general ideas and some perspective as to the fallout that will be happening from this, potential outcomes and the directions that will most likely be taken, because every bit of it is predictable and has been predicted by others who do more research and can analyze the cycles and how these events repeat and repeat and repeat, feeding into some other greater agendas that are only meant to parasitize and predate on humanity at large. So if you fell for the trick, shake yourself out of it, wake up, accept that you were fooled, own it, set it into the category that it deserves. Staged shock ritual, meant to be what it was, served its purpose for the general public, who is generally unaware and clueless. Stop feeding into it and stop being so easily fooled. Another aspect of this was this idea of belonging to a group, a clan, a club, a cult, people that are perhaps similarly or like-minded, people that you can talk to about these things, people who can get, conspiratorial, people who do research and look into the truth of things. And the need that you must at some point find the reality that you will never get to the bottom of things. You'll never figure out enough of these things. You'll never be able to discern what you need to know. You'll never find, original sources. You'll never get all the available data to be able to get complete pictures of whatever it is that you're looking at or researching or trying to find the history of, or whatever it might be that you want to know the truth about in this reality. You're never going to get to a point where it's completely satisfactory and completely fulfilling of that question to answer whatever it is you want to know everything about. Because relying on any information from the outside is the first problem, right? It's the first issue. It's the biggest issue. Anytime we're looking for the external authority, external ideas of experts and mentors and whatever you want to call it, people that we rely on to get information and discernment and facts and, the dirt, the real information, the real source, the real lived experience in history is fraught with problems. It's rife with fallibility and interpretations and perception filters that you have absolutely no control over. So by the time it's getting to you, to your ears, to your eyes, into your senses, it's already gone through a whole array of corruption, distortion, inversion. So regardless of what's coming at you, what information is being offered, you have to again unpack it and try and understand it from whoever's relaying it to you, whatever book you're reading, whatever documentary you're getting information from, whatever it is, however it is packaged in a certain way with a certain intention, agenda, angle, whatever you want to call it. It's flavored in a certain way. And if you're already leaning towards someone and believing in their passionate words and their ideas and how they have presented information that seems more truthful than the last, and if you're even worse than that, relying on fewer and fewer information sources because it's exhausting to try and get information from, dozens of different places, because who's got the time, especially if you're working for a living and having to contend with day-to-day life responsibilities. And now you have to try and gather information from multiple sources to try and discern what is real and true about something. How are you going to have the time to do that? And the focus and the energy and enough hours in a day. So we rely, and rightfully so, we try and discern on who is bringing information that's more real, authentic, tested, who's had the time to really dig into these things for 10, 20, 30 years. And there are many who have done these things and had that time for whatever circumstances they went through to be able to dig into that research, and they have devoted their lives to these pursuits. So that is a great starting point, certainly, but it is not the end all, right? And until we've taken the time to really develop the muscles of discernment, critical thinking, really truly on understanding the illusionary nature of our reality and that we too are part of that illusion, then to fully accept that no matter what information is coming to us, coming at us from whatever angle, it's based on some sort of illusion, distortion, corruption, and that we'll have to at some point be accepting the fact that we have done enough, that we have unraveled enough things, we've pulled back enough of the veil, we've explored enough of these events and hoaxes and false flags and frauds. We've looked at enough fake history. We've looked at enough, whatever it might be, in whatever field of interest. But ideally getting to the first principles, the most authentic ideas about what it is that we are and what it is that this reality is here to offer us, and this earth game is here to provide the experience and this human avatar sort of representation, what this story is, what going through all this endless suffering, pain, and fear is all about. We'll have to come to that, that tipping point where we realize that we will never get enough information, we'll never get enough truth, we'll never have enough time to really dig into everything to truly understand it, and that we're always going to have to return to what's inside us to be able to start living from within, from inside out, from that inexhaustible fountain of knowledge that is only from within. There are some profound questions that at some point you have to come to and be satisfied that you may or may not be able to answer in a way that settles nicely. The first principle ideas, the very authentic nature that underlies everything that you do in this life and everything that you pursue in this life, is going to demand you ask some very pertinent yet difficult and perhaps impossible to answer questions. What is real? What is the point of all of this? Why am I here? Who am I? What am I? What comes next? What is the purpose? How do I derive meaning? But ultimately, and most simply and profoundly, are you going to accept at any point that all of it is fake? And not so much fake, but illusion. All of it is illusion. And that you, this identity, this personality, is part of that illusion. Because one thing you can be certain of is that these shock rituals, false flags, hoaxes, and frauds are going to keep happening. And it's right in the name, shock. It's meant to shock you. The more you adhere to any of these movements, these ideologies, these groups, anything that relies on your belief, the more you will be owned, influenced, and shocked by these events. And it's ritualistic because it's all about energy harvesting, taking your focus, stealing your gaze, stealing your attention, getting you emotionally charged, feeding into the fabricated narrative, the story, the agenda, whatever it might be, designed specifically through the shock ritual to harvest that energy from you. Psychic, emotional, spiritual, affects you psychologically. And the more you've adhered to any of these systems and ideas, groups and beliefs, the more you're emotionally involved, the more negatively you will be affected and impacted. Or, of course, the more you'll feel that righteousness, that vengeance must be served, that you'll double down now because obviously you're in the right. Obviously they represented the good and the necessary and the positive momentum and the change that was necessary in the world, etc., etc. Attach whatever slogan and idea you want to it. But the more you believe in it, the more we believe in anything. The instant we do adopt a belief is when it becomes self-reinforcing and self-replicating. And everywhere you look, you'll find evidence to support that belief. And this is how these things are weaponized against us. Because belief, as we know, is the enemy of knowing. So we really need to be aware of these things and to always be questioning everything, and especially our beliefs. Obviously, I'm not suggesting that you simply become a passive observer of things. You're here in a human expression, in a very emotional, psychological, psychic, spiritually charged expression. You can't just shut all that down. And you came into this existence knowing exactly how and what and why. Knowing exactly your propensities, your sensitivities, your sensibilities, the probabilities and possibilities for your life. How it would play out with certain character and idea, personality, identity, your story, your narrative, how you were going to adopt ideas and adapt to situations and circumstances. All of these things weren't necessarily predestined, but you were certainly aware of them coming into this game. Whether you're here for the first time or the 100,000th is irrelevant. You are here. You are experiencing. You are watching videos. You're getting information. You're feeling. You're sensing. You're having a very earthbound, experiential journey through which you are, at various times, in various different ways, remembering, relearning, dispelling the veils, and dealing with that forgetting and that memory wiping that happens, that took away what you knew before. And you can argue one way or another whether or not that's malevolent or something that you chose to impose upon yourself. It's irrelevant because you can do nothing about it right now except to accept you're in it. Nobody tricked you or trapped you. Now what are you going to do about it? What are you going to become? Because it is all about the becoming the original authentic self, remembering, because we get such a short time, this blink of an eye that is a lifetime in a human expression, in a human existence. At times it can seem like drudgery and that it's just dragging on and impossible, and we get caught up in the psychological, emotional, spiritual loops. We get caught up in the entrapments and engagements of emotionality and what seems to be real in our world. We get caught up in the illusions, the grand illusion, of course. We get caught up in the idea that there's any sort of permanence to any of this. And that's, of course, buying into the lie, the distortion, the inversions that are inculcated into us throughout our lives, especially in our earliest years. And that's why it's so critically important for any parents to be aware of this and to stop that cycle, to afford, the next generation, whatever it might be, a leg up, as it were, so that they don't have to go through everything that we did and that you did and that your parents and grandparents and back and back and back everyone did, not to solve it, not to escape it, but to certainly have a different perspective and a different potentiality, a different path, a different journey, a different experience that's less beholden to the artifice, the inauthentic, the synthetic, artificial, so that by default we know the best way to live this life is in that razor thin space between 1 foot in the illusion, 1 foot out, remembering that what we are, the immortal within, is that which exists far beyond and above and outside of it. However you want to frame that or word that, there's no real language for it. It's a knowing. When we get to a point that we understand that this life in this particular realm, in this particular co-created sort of collective conscious construct, this simulacrum, when we can understand the nature of it, and that our particular variation leans toward the negative, seems to, right? Leans toward pain, suffering, fear, scarcity, lack, leans into these things for many of us, for the vast majority likely, then we can engage it in a different manner. We can let go of the idea of victimhood and martyrdom. We can let go of the idea that we're just being pushed around, that we're just being playthings for something. We can let go of the idea that these shock rituals should have any effect on us whatsoever. It's just another, little reminder of where we are. A little reminder that those kind of attacks and impositions, distortions and inversions are going to keep happening, going to keep trying to capture you, your attention, your energy, your psychic, spiritual, emotionality, everywhere you look, every day of the week. And it doesn't matter how far you try to get away from it, those reverberations will ultimately have some sort of effect. You can't avoid life. You can't avoid this earthbound experience, but you can avoid unnecessary pain, suffering, and fear when you learn to put it in a proper context, when you retake that authorship, that agency, that creatorship, in as much as possible in any particular human expression. We have no control over those outcomes and events. All we have control over is our awareness. And the idea that the sooner we can stop seeking, the sooner we can start remembering and embodying all that we are, the sooner we can start living inside out as the true creator, as the sovereign creator beings. So that when these events happen, when these false flags and seemingly brutal and violent things as represented on screens and in books and films, news media, whatever it is, social media, the stupid devices that you're staring at all day long, all the fakery and distortions and artificial representations, we can put them in the right place. We can immediately dispel them. We can immediately discharge any sort of emotional reactivity. Simply use them as a reminder. Yes, I'm still in the story. I'm still in the grand illusion. I'm still here. And yes, I am in fact part of that illusion. It doesn't serve us to spiritually bypass things. It doesn't serve us to hide from it or avoid it or subdue our processes through medications and substances and escapism. It doesn't serve us because it defers and delays the inevitable. And some people won't be able to deal with it. They'll just check out and make of that what you will. But again, knowing and understanding and appreciating and embracing the idea that we came here by choice, that we are that powerful, that we could choose to invest a tiny little portion of what we are into this realm, into this construct, into this life experience at this particular time, in this configuration. It speaks to the luminosity of what is beyond. It speaks to the, I don't want to say strength, but it speaks to the scale of what's really possible when we can properly frame these things, when we can properly frame this earthbound life, properly, completely understand it, embrace it for what it is. And all the emotionality, pain, suffering, fear, death are simply colors on a vast spectrum of experience. And that we can only appreciate and experience these things here because we chose to come into this particular game and experience it in such a way. But the more we attach ourselves and align ourselves with any sort of narrative, story, construct, or creation of this simulacrum, the more we invite pain, suffering, struggle, depression, and all the rest of it on the negative side of things. Or, of course, we can lean into the other side. We can take full advantage of things, take full advantage of people, situations, and circumstances to profit from how this construct works, to take full advantage of these things and gain those material advances and accumulate things, property, and the like. But everything is a compromise. Everything's a trade of some sort. Everything requires an accommodation one way or another. But at the same time, we're also at some point, in some way, choosing that particular experience. So it's not that one way is better than the other. It's not that whether you're a starving artist or a billionaire, entrepreneur, tycoon of some sort, it's not to say one is better than the other. It's simply to reframe the entire experience and put it all in the proper context. Whatever character you chose to come into this game to play and experience is what you chose to do this time around. It's not right or wrong, good or bad. It just is what it is. So use these events, these rituals, these shock rituals and the like as friendly reminders to yourself, as a note to self, right? I'm in the game, I'm in the illusion, and it's always going to try to pull me one way or another off the path, pull me to one extreme or another, pull me into polarity, magnetism, division, pull me in a never-ending oscillating wave of up and down and left and right, imbalance, uncertainty, indecisiveness, pain, suffering, fear. These are things that are guaranteed in this realm. It's just how it's designed. Consider that as you will, think of it what you will, judge it, deem it, label it. It doesn't matter. You're in it. So regardless of what you think about it, you can be feeling righteous or pissed off and angry at the nature of it. It doesn't change the nature of it. It only changes how you are in it and engaging with it, what you are going to get out of it, if anything, and how much it's going to fatigue, tire, exhaust, exasperate you in your everyday life. Because if you're attaching yourself to any of these ritualistic operations and false flags and hoaxes and frauds, you're somebody else's pawn. You're a useful idiot. Your ignorance is their reward. And maybe that's fine. Maybe that's what you came here to experience and to do. That wouldn't work for me. So maybe you fell for the trick again. Maybe you got caught up in the loop and the emotionality and reactivity. Maybe this person was somebody you actually cared about and supported their ideas, their vision, their movement. Now what? Do you think that it's capable to alter the trajectory of these movements and machinations of the system? Do you think your strong focus, emotional resolve, and getting behind these groups and people and agendas is going to affect real change in the world? Do you think that you'll be able to nudge that train from its tracks? Just consider where you want to put your energy and why. Consider how much you want to play into the game and why. And remember the grand illusion that you, your personality, your identity, that what you ascribe to this particular existence in this life is part of that illusion. Have a good one.
It's been coming down every other day, but they tell me we are in drought season. That's not my story, not my reality. No matter what you force my eyes to see, and the sky is falling right on top of me, but they tell me it's for the greater good.